I don't think about it often. Most days I keep it buried. Just another weird, blurry memory from that limbo spring after high school. But every year, when Easter rolls around and the world turns pastel and cheerful, it claws its way back. Because if Max hadn't shown up when he did, if his flashlight beam had flickered even a few seconds later, I don't think I'd be alive to tell you this. It started like a tradition, not one of those heartwarming family ones, but a twisted little game my friends and I invented back in middle school. We called it Midnight Hunt, a chaotic blend of manhunt and Easter egg hunting. 2 teams, one hiding, one seeking. Same rules as always, just played deep in the woods and always at night. That was the point. The darkness made everything feel more alive. By our senior year, it had become more of a joke than a game. But that spring, right after graduation and just before we all scattered for college, Nico's parents left town for Easter weekend. That was our green light. We were 6. Me, Max, Nico, Liam, Frank, and Ben. We'd played the game a dozen times before, always behind Nico's place. His property stretched out forever, past the backyard, through thick woods, down a slope toward a narrow creek and an old horse pasture. We knew it like the backs of our hands, or so we thought. That Saturday night, after the sun dipped behind the trees and the backyard floodlight kicked on, we pulled out the old plastic eggs from a storage bin in Nico's garage. Same as always. Some were cracked. A few still had candy inside from years ago. But that was the charm. We paired off using a random number generator on someone's phone. The seekers that night were me, Max, and Nico. The hiders were Liam and Ben. Frank was sidelined with a rolled ankle, so he stayed back to referee, or more accurately, just drink root beer and roast us from the porch. We gave the hiders 10 minutes to disappear into the woods with their eggs. Then we set off. The first few minutes were nothing out of the ordinary. Nico cut left. Max went straight. I veered into the thickest part of the woods, where the trees pressed close and the underbrush scraped at your legs. I wanted to cut across and double back, try and outsmart the guys like I used to. The moon was out, high and full, just enough to make the flashlight unnecessary. I kept it off, trusting my eyes to adjust. The silence was comforting at first, just the crunch of twigs beneath my shoes, the occasional rustle of a squirrel or bird settling down for the night. Then I saw movement. About 20 feet ahead, something hunched behind a wide oak. At first, I thought it was Nico. It made sense. He liked to mess with people during the game, fake them out, spook them. I crouched, crept forward, slow and quiet. When I got within arm's reach, I lunged, grinning like an idiot. "Gotcha!" I didn't even get the word out. The thing turned. And it wasn't Nico. It wasn't anyone I knew. He was a man, older, maybe late 30s or 40s, filthy, sunken eyes, pupils blown wide. His skin looked waxy and raw in the moonlight. His clothes hung off him in tatters. And the smell. God, the smell hit me like a wall. Rot and sweat and something feral. Before I could scream, he tackled me. We hit the ground hard. My head bounced off a root. My breath vanished. Then, his hands were on my throat. I thrashed, kicked, clawed at him, but he was stronger than he looked. His grip tightened, crushing my windpipe. The world shrank to tunnel vision. No wind, no birds, just silence, and those wide, wild eyes. Then, light. A flicker through the trees, then a beam, slicing through the dark, catching the man in its glow. He froze, just like that, as if the light burned. Without a word, he let go and ran, vanished into the brush like an animal. I lay there, choking, gasping for air. Max stumbled into the clearing, pale and out of breath. "Dude," I saw something. What happened?" I couldn't answer. He helped me sit up, and I finally coughed out a few broken words. There was a guy. Max's face drained of color. We didn't go after him. Max said no, said it was too dangerous. He was right. We stumbled back toward the house in stunned silence. When we got there, everyone was still in the yard. Frank on a lawn chair, Nico and Liam arguing about some egg hiding spot. But when they saw us, my scraped face, my trembling hands, the tone shifted. The 6 of us ended up in Nico's basement. The TV was on, but muted. Everyone was talking over each other until Ben said something that shut us all up. He said, "I saw 2 people out there," before the countdown was up. We all stared at him. He clarified. Right before the game started, when he was finding a spot to hide, he'd seen 2 figures moving together through the woods. He thought it was Nico and Max cheating. But now it meant something else. Because none of us were together before the countdown. And Max and I had just confirmed 1 stranger in the woods. But if Ben was right, there were at least 2. Maybe more. Nico got quiet. He stood up, arms crossed, jaw tight. "No cops," he said. "If we call anyone, I get busted. My parents'll kill me. I'm not even supposed to have people over." The room erupted again. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to call the cops. But the guilt hung in the air. No one wanted to screw over Nico. We were friends. Brothers, kind of. But something real had happened. Something dangerous. And we were just letting it go. In the end, I gave up. I went to bed early, in one of Nico's guest rooms, my heart still hammering, my throat sore. I didn't sleep much. I left the next morning before anyone else was awake. Weeks passed. Then summer came. Then college. We didn't talk about that night again. Not really. We moved on, or at least pretended to. Then, one random afternoon before we left for school, Nico brought it up like it was no big deal. He laughed and said, "Oh, by the way, I went back and got the eggs we left behind. Figured it'd be weird if my mom found plastic all over the woods." Max and I just stared at him. I wanted to ask if he saw anything, if the woods felt off. But I didn't. We all just laughed it off, like it was another stupid teenage prank gone wrong. But the truth? It wasn't a prank. There were people out there that night, not just some vagrant wandering through the trees. They were watching us, waiting, moving before the game even started. And I keep thinking about how quiet it was when he was on top of me. No wind, no sound, just silence. Like the forest itself had stopped to watch. I'm in college now, far away. But every year, around Easter, I feel it all over again. The weight of his body, the pressure on my throat, that flashlight beam breaking through the dark, and the thought I can't escape. What if Max had been just a few seconds later? I used to think the countryside was peaceful. There's this idea people have, especially city folks, that the quiet out there is wholesome, healing even. You go out to the country, you breathe deep, you listen to the wind move through the trees, and you feel better. But sometimes, the silence isn't peace. Sometimes, it's a warning. Every Easter since I was a kid, my family made the long drive to Uncle Mark's house. He lives in what feels like the middle of nowhere, deep in the countryside, surrounded by fields, dirt roads, and dense, endless woods. It's a big old place with creaky floors, low beams, and a giant wraparound porch. It always smelled like cedar and wood smoke, like the house had been steeped in the outdoors for decades. My dad loved it. My uncles loved it. Everyone seemed to come alive out there. Everyone but me. I never felt like I belonged. My relatives are the rugged kind, into hunting, farming, repairing their own trucks. The kind of people who wear flannel because it's practical, not because it's trendy. I always felt like a soft city kid by comparison. I didn't know how to skin anything, or ride a four-wheeler, or even split firewood without embarrassing myself. The only one who got that, really got that, was Eli. He was my cousin, maybe 3 or 4 years older, but we clicked right away. He wasn't like the others. He didn't pressure me to go outside or poke fun when I asked where the outlets were. When I was a kid, he'd let me hang out with him and his friends. As we got older, it became more of a tradition, just the two of us disappearing into the basement during family holidays, passing hours playing pool and talking about music, movies, or life after high school. That Easter, the house was chaos like always. Kids running through the halls, adults shouting over each other, country music playing from some tinny Bluetooth speaker. It was warm outside, but I still gravitated to the basement, where Eli was already setting up the table. We must have played 10 games. It was like we were waiting for something, but I didn't know what. Eli was quiet that day, more thoughtful than usual, and at some point he looked at me and said, "You ever actually been in the woods behind here?" I laughed. "What do you mean?" "Of course not." He grinned, but there was something off in his eyes. "You should. It's different out there, peaceful, real quiet." I made a face, but he kept at it. Told me how the trees went on for miles, how you could walk for an hour and not see another person, not hear a sound but your own steps, how there were places that didn't feel like they belonged in this world. It sounded poetic coming from him, and eventually, I gave in. We told Uncle Mark, who waved us off with his usual "just don't get eaten by coyotes" kind of humor. Eli grabbed 2 bottles of water, and we headed out the back door. The tree line looked like it always had, innocent, ordinary. But the moment we stepped into the forest, it felt like we'd crossed into a different place altogether. The air was heavier, still, and the deeper we walked, the more I noticed how little sound there actually was. No birds, no wind, just our shoes against the earth and the occasional snap of a branch. Eli moved like he'd done this 100 times. I followed close behind, unsure if I was excited or just too far in to turn back. About 40 minutes in, we were deep. The house was long gone, the trees taller, the light dimmer. That's when we heard it. Thunk. We both stopped. It came again. Thunk. A pause. Thunk. Not random, not natural. Something heavy, hitting wood, over and over. The kind of sound that cuts through you. Eli went still. His eyes narrowed. Then he muttered, "Could be a hunter, or someone setting a trap." But his voice lacked conviction. Still, he pressed forward, and I followed. The woods had changed. I could feel it in my chest. Every step felt heavier. The air thicker, like we were walking into something we weren't supposed to see. And then, he stopped. He threw his arm across my chest and whispered, "Look." I followed his gaze upward, and what I saw nearly dropped me to my knees. 3 crosses, not upright, upside down. Each one nailed high, far too high for someone to reach without a ladder. They were old, crude things, splintered wood, driven into 3 separate trees. They swayed just slightly in the still air, casting crooked shadows that didn't seem to move right. That's when I felt it. Eyes on us. I turned my head. There, maybe 20 feet away, half blurred by the trees, was a man. He looked like a lumberjack, beard down to his chest, heavy boots, thick flannel. But something about him was wrong. Like he'd been standing there a long time, like he wasn't part of the forest, He just existed in it. He didn't move, didn't blink. Then, in a low, flat voice, he said, "You shouldn't be here." I froze. Eli stepped in front of me like a shield and said, "Sorry." We didn't know. No response. The man didn't raise his voice, didn't gesture, just stared. And so we turned and walked. Neither of us spoke. The way back felt longer, colder. My stomach churned with every step. I could feel him behind us, even though I didn't dare look back. When we finally burst through the trees and saw the house again, I could have cried. The noise, the movement, the normalcy of the backyard, it all felt unreal after what we'd seen. We went straight to Uncle Mark. Eli did most of the talking. I just stood there, trying not to shake. When Eli described the man, Uncle Mark's whole face changed. He stopped smiling. His eyes narrowed. "That doesn't sound like anyone I know," he said. We brought up the idea of checking the woods, maybe alerting someone, but he shut it down hard. "No sense in riling things up," he said. "If someone's out there, we don't want them knowing we're watching, or worse, bringing trouble back here." That night, I barely slept. My head spun with everything I'd seen. The crosses, the man, the weight in his voice. "You shouldn't be here." Like we'd trespassed on something sacred, or cursed. I woke before dawn, heart racing for reasons I couldn't explain. The house was quiet, still. I wandered to the third floor, to the little study with its high window overlooking the backyard. And that's when I saw it. At the edge of the woods, where the trees met the clearing, 3 figures stood. Each held a small, flickering torch. They weren't moving, just standing there, silent, facing the house, facing me. I couldn't breathe. I turned and sprinted for Uncle Mark's room. I didn't knock. I just burst in. He was up in seconds, grabbing his rifle without a word. No hesitation. We ran back to the deck, but they were gone. The tree line was empty, the grass undisturbed. Uncle Mark raised his rifle and fired 3 deafening shots into the sky. The whole house exploded into chaos. Lights on, doors slamming, voices rising. Easter was ruined. People cried, others argued, some left early. But no one, not even the loudest uncles, joked about what happened. The fear had sunk in too deep. When we finally packed up to leave, I stood by the car and stared into those woods one last time. I didn't see anything, but I felt it, that same weight, that same presence. Something had followed us back. Months passed. Summer turned to fall, then winter. Uncle Mark called it Christmas, said the woods had been quiet. No signs of anyone, no torches, no tracks. He said it like that should have made me feel better. But it didn't, because I know what I saw. The crosses, the man, the watchers at the edge of the trees, and I know deep down we stumbled into something we weren't meant to see, something that's still out there, waiting and watching. I used to love Easter, the pastel colors, the songs, the way the sunlight always seemed a little softer on that Sunday morning. But that changed when I was 9 or 10. Because now, every Easter, I remember him. The one in the suit, and the words I still hear sometimes in my dreams. "You've been specially picked." It was a beautiful spring morning, warm for April in Ohio. Our church was packed with families dressed in their Sunday best. I remember how itchy my neck felt in that stiff little shirt collar, how my mom licked her thumb and wiped a smudge from my cheek before we walked in. Easter service was always long, and that year was no different. 2 hours of standing, singing, and sitting. But I didn't mind. I was a church kid. I knew the routine, and besides, the egg hunt was coming after. When the service ended, my parents sent me down to Sunday school in the basement. It was the same place we always went. Long carpeted hallway, 8 classrooms split by age. Each room was decorated with crayon pictures of Jesus and lambs. That day, there were balloons and construction paper lilies taped up too. The teachers even wore cheap bunny ears, which made us laugh. The basement felt safe, familiar. So when I had to go to the bathroom, no one batted an eye when I left the room alone. The bathrooms were all the way at the end of the hall, past the last classroom. I remember thinking how quiet it was down there, just the hum of the lights and the faint murmur of a teacher's voice through a door. I stepped into the stall, locked it, and sat there. When I heard it, a sound I didn't recognize at first. Scrp, scrp. Metal on metal, slow, deliberate. It came from the stall beside mine. I remember holding my breath, listening. It wasn't someone adjusting their belt or shifting on the seat. It was off. Then, under the divider, I saw a shadow. Not feet, not shoes. It moved wrong, low to the ground, like someone crawling, not on their hands and knees, but on their elbows. It slid back and forth under the divider, paused. Then, it stopped, right in front of my stall. I remember staring at that shadow, my breath caught in my chest. Then it slowly, so slowly, backed away. I sat there frozen, and once I was sure it was gone, I finished up, unlocked the door, and walked out to the sink. I was washing my hands when I saw it. In the mirror behind me, the door to the stall creaked open, and someone stepped out. It was a man. But not just any man. He was wearing an Easter bunny costume. At least, I think that's what it was supposed to be. The fur was gray, not white, matted and stained like it had never been cleaned. One of the ears flopped lifelessly while the other stuck out at an awkward angle. And the face, oh God, the face was crooked. One of the black plastic eyes hung lower than the other, like it had been sewn back on by a child. And yet, I didn't feel scared, just curious. I was a kid, and something about him, maybe the setting, maybe the costume, made me feel like I was in a storybook, a magical moment, like he was there for me. I turned around and said, "Hi." He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, head tilted. Then, without a word, he raised one gloved paw and pointed toward the heavy gray door, the one at the end of the hall, the one we were told never to use. Finally, in a muffled voice that barely came through the mask, he said, "You've been specially picked. There's something waiting for you, just outside." And I believed him. The door, usually locked, swung open like it had been waiting. I followed him out without hesitation. Outside, it was quiet. The sun was still shining, the world still going, but the air felt wrong. He led me toward the back of the church, where the parking lot curved behind the building. I remember the click of his big costume feet on the pavement. Then I saw it. A car, parked near the dumpster, almost hidden behind a hedgerow. The back door was cracked open. He reached down and took my hand. His grip was soft, but there was something damp and unpleasant about the glove. We walked closer to the car until something made me stop. From the shadows near the dumpster, another Easter bunny stepped into view. This one looked almost identical. Same sagging fur, same crooked eye. And that's when something shifted inside me. The magic, the storybook feeling, it all dissolved. 2 Easter bunnies in a parking lot? Something wasn't right. I pulled my hand back, just a little. And then, a voice cut through the air, sharp and terrified. "Hey, hey, what are you doing?" It was Miss Grace, my Sunday school teacher. She had just stepped around the corner, probably coming out for a smoke. The scream that followed was like nothing I've ever heard from another adult. It was pure panic. Shattering. The man in the costume froze. Then, without a word, he turned and sprinted for the car. He threw the door open and jumped inside. I ran, straight into Miss Grace's arms. She wrapped herself around me like a shield. As the car peeled out of the lot, I turned my head, and in that split second, through the back window, I saw a face, a child, another kid, staring out at me with wide, empty eyes. Miss Grace didn't waste a second. She brought me inside, called my parents, and the police arrived within minutes. I told them everything: the costume, the scraping noise, the second man, the child in the car. But no other kids had been reported missing. No cameras caught the car's plate. It was as if the whole thing never happened. What haunts me most, even more than that other child's face, is the knowledge that he knew the church. He knew the building, knew the basement, knew the door. That door was supposed to stay locked. Whoever he was, he understood that place better than some of the staff. He planned it. And what if Miss Grace hadn't come out when she did? What if she had stayed upstairs an extra 30 seconds? I think about that sometimes, about how my life could have just ended there, in a church parking lot, on Easter Sunday. These days, I still go to church. I still celebrate the holiday. But Easter carries a shadow now, a quiet, cold presence I can't shake. Every time I see an Easter bunny costume, on TV, in a mall, in a parade, I feel that weight in my chest, that scraping sound in my ears, that child's face in the window, and I remember what he said to me. "You've been specially picked." I used to think he meant it like a gift. Now I wonder if he meant something else entirely.